Part 1. The Weight of Broken Dreams. Rachel stared at the pile of bills on her kitchen table. Each envelope felt like a punch to the stomach. Red letters screamed, "Final notice," from every corner. She picked up one letter after another, reading, numbers that made her feel sick. The biggest one was from the bank. $47,000. That's what she owed, and she had 30 days to pay it. If she couldn't find the money, she would lose everything. The ranch that had been in her family for 3 generations would be gone forever. She remembered when her dad was still alive. He used to sit at this same table, drinking his morning coffee and planning the day's work. He always said the land was their treasure. "This place will take care of you if you take care of it," he would tell her. But now, 6 months after his funeral, Rachel wasn't sure she could take care of anything. The drought had been the worst anyone could remember. Their wells ran dry, and the grass turned brown and brittle. The cattle grew thin, and she had to sell them for much less than they were worth. But that money went straight to paying for her dad's medical bills from his last year fighting cancer. Rachel had tried everything. She worked at the town diner, pulling double shifts until her feet ached and her back screamed. She sold her dad's old truck, his tools, even his favorite saddle. Nothing was enough. The debt kept growing like weeds after rain. She walked to the window and looked out at the land that had shaped her whole life. The old oak tree where she used to swing as a child still stood strong. The barn where she learned to ride was still there, though it needed paint. The fence posts her grandfather had set by hand decades ago still marked the property lines. Every corner of this place held memories. She could almost hear her dad's laugh echoing from the porch where he used to tell stories. She could see her grandmother hanging laundry on the line that still stretched between 2 posts behind the house. This wasn't just property to her. It was home. It was family. It was everything. But the numbers on the bills didn't care about memories. They didn't care that this land had been passed down from father to daughter, mother to son for over 60 years. They just wanted their money, and Rachel didn't have it. She had thought about asking her friends for help, but pride stopped her every time. These people had their own struggles. The whole county was hurting from the drought. Her cousin lived in California now, but he had 3 kids and a mortgage. Her aunt in Texas had just gone through a divorce. There was nobody left to ask. The worst part was the shame. Rachel felt like she was failing everyone who had come before her. Her dad had trusted her to keep the ranch going. He had taught her everything he knew about cattle, about the land, about making tough decisions. But somehow she wasn't enough. She picked up the bank notice again. The words seemed to swim on the page. Final notice of foreclosure proceedings. The legal language made her head spin, but the message was clear. Pay up or get out. Rachel had grown up believing that hard work could solve any problem. Her dad had taught her that if you worked hard enough, if you never gave up, things would work out. But she had been working as hard as she could for months, and things were only getting worse. The phone rang, making her jump. She looked at the caller ID and saw it was the bank again. She let it go to voicemail. She couldn't handle another conversation about payment plans and interest rates and deadlines. Not today. Instead, she grabbed her old work boots and headed outside. The evening air was cooler than the stifling heat inside the house. She walked toward the pasture where a few head of cattle still grazed. These were the ones she couldn't bring herself to sell. They were from her dad's favorite bloodline, descended from a bull he had saved up 2 years to buy. The cattle looked up at her with their big, gentle eyes. They didn't know their home was about to disappear. They didn't understand that their owner was about to lose everything. They just wanted food and water and a safe place to live, simple needs that Rachel might not be able to provide much longer. As the sun started to set, painting the sky orange and pink, Rachel sat on an old fence post and tried not to cry. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry anymore. Tears wouldn't pay the bills. Tears wouldn't save the ranch. But sometimes when the weight of everything got too heavy, the tears came anyway. She thought about what would happen if she lost the ranch. Where would she go? What would she do? She had never lived anywhere else. This land was all she knew. these animals, this work, this life. It was who she was. The stars started to appear in the darkening sky. Her dad used to say that the stars were like promises. They showed up every night no matter what happened during the day. But tonight even the stars couldn't make her feel better. Rachel knew she had to face the truth. She was out of options. She had tried everything she could think of, and it wasn't enough. In 30 days, strangers would come and put locks on the gates. They would auction off what was left of her family's legacy to the highest bidder. She walked back to the house slowly, dreading another sleepless night spent staring at the ceiling and worrying. The bills were still on the table, waiting for her like hungry wolves. Tomorrow she would have to face them again. Tomorrow she would have to figure out how to make a miracle happen. But tonight, she just wanted to remember what it felt like, when this place was full of hope instead of fear. When her dad was alive and the future seemed bright. When she believed that love and hard work were enough to overcome anything. Those days felt like a lifetime ago now. Part 2. The unexpected proposal. Tyler had been moving from place to place for 3 years now. His whole life fit into one old duffel bag in the back of his pickup truck. That's how he liked it. No roots, no commitments, no one counting on him to stick around. At 32, Tyler had learned the hard way that staying in one place too long just led to heartbreak. His ex-wife had taught him that lesson when she cleaned out their bank account and ran off with his former best friend. That betrayal had cost him everything, his house, his business, even his faith in people. Now he worked wherever ranchers needed an extra hand. He was good with horses, better with cattle, and he never caused trouble. When the job was done, he moved on. It was a lonely life, but it was safe. Tyler had stopped at Betty's Diner in Cedar Falls for coffee and a slice of pie. The place was small and worn with cracked vinyl seats and a coffee pot that had seen better days. But the pie was good, and the coffee was strong. That's all he needed. He was sitting at the counter, planning his next move, when he heard a woman talking on the phone in the corner booth. Her voice was quiet, but there was something in it that made him listen. It was the sound of someone trying very hard not to fall apart. "Please," she was saying into the phone, "I just need a little more time. I can get the money. I just need another month." There was a long pause. "I understand, but this land has been in my family for 60 years. It's all I have left of my father." Tyler glanced over and saw a young woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore a diner uniform with a name tag that said, Rachel. Her shoulders were shaking slightly, and she was gripping the phone so tight her knuckles were white. "No, sir, I understand," she continued. 30 days. Yes, I'll have the 47,000 by then." When she hung up, Tyler saw her put her head in her hands for just a moment before she took a deep breath and got back to work. Something about her reminded Tyler of his little sister, Amy. Amy had been tough like that, always fighting battles that seemed too big for her. She had died in a car accident 5 years ago, and Tyler still blamed himself for not being there when she needed him most. When Rachel's shift ended, Tyler watched her walk to an old pickup truck in the parking lot. She sat behind the wheel for a long time, just staring straight ahead. He could see her looking at some papers, and her shoulders started shaking again. Tyler surprised himself by getting out of his truck and walking over to hers. He knocked gently on her window. When she rolled it down, he could see she had been crying. "Sorry to bother you," he said, taking off his hat. "I'm Tyler. I couldn't help but hear your phone call in there." Rachel's face turned red, and she started to roll the window back up. "Wait," Tyler said quickly. "I think I might be able to help." "Look, mister, I don't need charity," Rachel said, but her voice was more tired than angry. "It's not charity," Tyler replied. "It's more like a business deal. Mind if I explain?" Rachel looked at him for a long moment. Tyler could see her weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "I've got some money sitting in a bank account that I've never touched," Tyler began. "It's from my grandmother. She left it to me when she died, but I never felt right about using it." That was partially true. The money was there, but Tyler hadn't mentioned the strings attached to getting the bigger inheritance. "Why would you want to help a complete stranger?" Rachel asked. Tyler took a deep breath. This was the crazy part. Because I need a wife. Rachel's eyes went wide. Excuse me? Not like that, Tyler said quickly, feeling his face heat up. It's complicated. My grandmother had this idea that people should be settled down by a certain age. She left me a bigger inheritance, but I can only claim it if I'm married before my 33rd birthday. That's 4 months from now. Rachel stared at him like he had grown a second head. You want me to marry you for money? I want us to help each other, Tyler said. You need money to save your ranch. I need a wife to claim my inheritance. We get married, solve both our problems, then go our separate ways when everything's settled. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard, Rachel said. Maybe, Tyler agreed. But crazy doesn't mean it won't work. Rachel looked down at the foreclosure notice in her lap, then back at Tyler. You're serious about this? Dead serious. Look, I know it sounds insane, but I've been listening to you talk to that bank, and I can see how much this place means to you. My grandmother always said her money should be used to help people, not just sit in a bank collecting dust. What's in it for you? Rachel asked. Besides the inheritance? Tyler thought about that. The truth was he wasn't sure. Maybe it was seeing someone fight for something they loved. Maybe it was Amy's memory pushing him to help someone who reminded him of her. Maybe he was just tired of running. I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe I'm tired of having nowhere to go. Maybe it would be nice to have a purpose for a while. Rachel was quiet for a long time. Tyler could see her thinking, weighing the risks against her desperate situation. If we did this insane thing, she said slowly, what would be the rules? Whatever you want them to be, Tyler replied. I can sleep in the barn or the bunkhouse. We keep things strictly business. When my inheritance comes through and your ranch is safe, we get a quiet divorce and go back to our separate lives. And you'd really give me enough money to pay off the bank? Every penny you need. Rachel looked out at the sunset, painting the sky pink and gold. Tyler could see her dad's truck in his own memory when Amy used to sit like that, trying to make impossible decisions. This is crazy, Rachel said again. Yes, it is. I don't even know you. No, you don't. You could be a serial killer or something. Tyler almost smiled at that. I could be. Want to see my references from the last 5 ranches I worked? Rachel looked at him again, really looked at him this time. Tyler stood still and let her study his face. He had learned that people could usually tell if someone was lying if they looked hard enough. Why do I get the feeling you're running from something? She asked. Because I am, Tyler said. Same as you're fighting for something. Maybe that's why this might work. Rachel was quiet again. Then she said, if we do this, there are rules. Strict rules. Name them. We keep it business. No feelings, no complications. We both get what we need. Then we walk away clean. Agreed. And if either of us wants out before the year is up, we can end it. No questions asked. Deal. Rachel took another long look at the foreclosure notice. Tyler could see her hands shaking slightly as she folded it up. When? She asked. Tomorrow if you want. The courthouse opens at 9. Rachel nodded slowly. Okay, let's do this crazy thing. As Tyler walked back to his truck, he wondered what he had just gotten himself into. But for the first time in 3 years, he felt like he was moving toward something instead of running away from it. Tomorrow, he and a woman he barely knew would become husband and wife. It was the craziest thing he had ever done. But maybe crazy was exactly what they both needed. Part 3. Strangers Bound by Necessity. The courthouse wedding was the most awkward 20 minutes of Rachel's life. She wore her only good dress, a navy blue one she had bought for her dad's funeral. Tyler had managed to find a tie somewhere, though. It looked like he had borrowed it from someone much shorter. The judge was an older man who had probably seen hundreds of these quick ceremonies. He didn't ask questions about why 2 people who clearly barely knew each other were getting married on a Tuesday morning. He just read the words, had them sign the papers, and declared them husband and wife. The rings came from a pawn shop downtown. Tyler had insisted on buying them, saying it would look more official. They were simple gold bands, nothing fancy. but they felt heavy on Rachel's finger as they walked out of the courthouse as Mr. and Mrs. Tyler Bennett. "Well," Tyler said as they stood on the courthouse steps, "I guess that's that." "I guess it is," Rachel replied, twisting the unfamiliar ring around her finger. They drove separately back to the ranch, Tyler following Rachel's old pickup in his even older one. The whole situation felt surreal. Yesterday morning, Rachel had been a single woman about to lose everything. Now she was married to a stranger who had promised to save her home. When they got to the ranch, Tyler parked his truck by the barn and got out slowly, looking around at the property he would be calling home for the next year. "It's not much," Rachel said, suddenly seeing the place through his eyes. The paint was peeling on the house, the barn roof had a few missing shingles, and the fence line could use some work. "It's more than I've had in 3 years," Tyler replied, and something in his voice made Rachel look at him more closely. They established the rules right away. Tyler would sleep in the small office attached to the barn. It had a cot, a desk, and a tiny bathroom. It wasn't fancy, but it was private. Rachel would keep the house. They would split the ranch work and keep their personal lives completely separate. "I'm usually up by 5, Rachel told him as they stood awkwardly in the barn. "Coffee's always on by 5:30 if you want some." "I'm an early riser too," Tyler said, dropping his duffel bag on the cot. "I can handle the heavy lifting, fence, repairs, that kind of thing. You know the business side better than I do." "The cattle need to be moved to the south pasture tomorrow," Rachel said, "and the water trough in the north field has been acting up. I'll take care of it." They ran out of things to say pretty quickly. Rachel headed back to the house, feeling strange about leaving a man she barely knew on her property. But the alternative had been losing the property altogether, so she guessed this was better. The first few days were uncomfortable. They moved around each other carefully, like 2 cats sharing the same territory. Tyler was up before dawn, working on repairs and tending to the cattle. Rachel went to her job at the diner, came home to handle the bookkeeping, and tried to pretend having a husband wasn't the weirdest thing that had ever happened to her. But slowly things started to settle into a routine. Tyler was good with his hands and fixed things around the ranch that had been broken for months. The barn door that used to stick now swung smoothly. The loose boards on the porch were nailed down, tight. The old windmill that had been squeaking for years now turned silently in the breeze. Rachel found herself looking forward to their brief conversations over morning coffee. Tyler didn't talk much, but when he did, he was thoughtful. He asked good questions about the ranch and listened carefully to her answers. "Your dad built most of this himself?" Tyler asked one morning, admiring the solid construction of the barn. "Him and my grandfather," Rachel said. "Dad always said if you're going to build something, build it to last." "Smart man. You can tell." He took pride in his work. It was the first time anyone had said anything nice about her dad since the funeral. Rachel felt a warm feeling in her chest that she quickly pushed away. This was business, not friendship. But the ranch didn't care about their emotional boundaries. When a late spring storm rolled through with hail and high winds, they found themselves working side by side to secure loose equipment and get the cattle to shelter. When part of the barn roof blew off, they spent hours in the rain trying to tarp it down. "Hand me that rope," Tyler shouted over the wind, balancing on a ladder that was swaying dangerously. "This is crazy," Rachel yelled back, but she held the ladder steady while he tied down the tarp. "You're going to get yourself killed." "Not today," Tyler replied, climbing down once the roof was secure. They were both soaked to the skin and covered in mud, but the barn was protected. Standing there in the aftermath of the storm, looking at what they had accomplished together, Rachel felt something shift between them. It wasn't romantic. They were both too tired and dirty for that. But it was the first time she had felt like they were a team instead of 2 strangers sharing space. As the weeks passed, their conversations grew longer. Tyler learned about Rachel's dreams for the ranch, how she wanted to expand into organic beef, maybe start a small farmer's market operation. Rachel discovered that Tyler knew more about sustainable ranching than he had let on. He had ideas about rotational grazing and water conservation that could help the ranch become more profitable. "You've thought about this a lot," Rachel said. One evening as they sat on the porch planning improvements to the grazing system. "I've worked a lot of different places," Tyler replied. "You see what works and what doesn't. Your dad had good instincts. With a few changes, this place could be really something." "You talk like you're planning to stick around," Rachel said, then immediately regretted it. They both knew this was temporary. Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Just thinking out loud," he said finally. But Rachel caught something in his voice that made her wonder if he was thinking about more than just the ranch. She found herself watching him work sometimes, noticing how gentle he was with the animals, how he never took shortcuts, even when no one was watching. One evening, Rachel was struggling to get a sick calf to take medicine when Tyler appeared beside her. "Here, let me try," he said softly. He had a way with animals that reminded Rachel of her dad. The calf that had been fighting Rachel settled down immediately when Tyler spoke to it. "How do you do that?" Rachel asked, genuinely curious. "Animals know when you're trying to help them," Tyler said. "You just have to be patient and let them trust you." Rachel wondered if he was talking about more than just animals. The breakthrough came during calving season. They had been taking turns checking on the pregnant cows throughout the night, but one particularly difficult birth required both of them. They spent hours in the barn working together to help a heifer deliver her first calf. It was touch and go for a while. The calf was positioned wrong and they had to work carefully to turn it without hurting the mother. Tyler's steady hands and Rachel's knowledge of the animals made them an effective team. When the calf finally arrived, healthy and strong, they both sat back in the hay, exhausted but relieved. Without thinking, Rachel leaned against Tyler's shoulder. She was too tired to care about boundaries, and he felt solid and warm and reassuring. Tyler didn't pull away. Instead, he reached up and gently brushed a piece of straw from her hair. "Good work, partner," he said quietly. Rachel looked up at him, and for a moment, the careful distance they had maintained seemed to disappear. She could see something in his eyes that hadn't been there before, something that looked a lot like the feeling she had been trying to ignore in herself. But then the moment passed. Rachel pulled away, suddenly aware of how close they had been sitting. Tyler cleared his throat and stood up, busying himself with cleaning up the supplies. "I should get some sleep," Rachel said, not meeting his eyes. "Yeah, me too," Tyler replied. But as Rachel walked back to the house, she could feel him watching her, and she could feel her own heart beating faster than it should have been. They were supposed to be business partners. They were supposed to be keeping things simple. But somewhere, along the way, without either of them planning it, things had started to get complicated. Part 4. When hearts betray the plan by late summer, Rachel had to admit that their carefully planned arrangement was falling apart. Not the business side. That was working better than she had ever imagined. The ranch was thriving under their combined efforts. Tyler's knowledge of modern farming techniques and Rachel's understanding of the land made them an incredible team. But the emotional walls they had built were crumbling, and Rachel didn't know how to stop it. It started with small things, the way Tyler always made sure there was fresh coffee waiting when she got home from her diner shifts. How he had quietly fixed the squeaky screen door that had been driving her crazy for months. The fact that he remembered she didn't like onions, and picked them out of the salad when they ate dinner together. Because somehow they had started eating dinner together. It began when Rachel made too much food one night and invited Tyler to join her rather than let it go to waste. Then it happened again the next night, and the night after that. Before either of them realized it, sharing meals had become their routine. Their conversations during these dinners grew deeper and more personal. Tyler told her about his sister Amy, and how losing her had made him afraid to care about anyone too much. Rachel shared memories of her father, stories she had never told anyone else about what it was like growing up on the ranch. "He used to take me out to check on the cattle every morning," Rachel said one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner. "Even when I was tiny, barely big enough to stay on a horse. He said the land and the animals were my birthright and I needed to understand them." "Sounds like a good dad," Tyler said, rocking slowly in the old chair that had been her father's favorite. He was. "I just wish I could have been a better rancher. Maybe if I had been smarter about the finances or better at planning for the drought." "Hey," Tyler said, leaning forward to look at her seriously. None of what happened was your fault. You were dealing with things that would have broken most people. The fact that you're still fighting shows how strong you are. The way he looked at her when he said it made Rachel's heart skip a beat. There was something in his eyes that went beyond friendship or partnership, something that scared her and thrilled her at the same time. The turning point came during a particularly difficult week in August. A summer storm had knocked out power to half the county, and one of their best breeding cows was having complications with her pregnancy. They spent 3 days and nights in the barn, taking turns monitoring the cow and trying to keep her comfortable. On the third night, exhausted and worried, they both fell asleep in the hay beside the cow's stall. When Rachel woke up just before dawn, she found herself curled against Tyler's side, his arm wrapped protectively around her. For a moment, she let herself enjoy the feeling of being held, of not being alone with all her worries. Tyler woke up a few minutes later and realized where they were. Rachel expected him to pull away immediately, to make some joke about falling asleep on the job. Instead, he tightened his arm around her slightly. "How's our girl doing?" he asked softly, nodding toward the cow. "Better, I think," Rachel whispered back, not wanting to break the peaceful moment. They stayed like that for several more minutes, watching the sun come up through the barn windows. Rachel had never felt so safe, so perfectly content. It was dangerous territory for a marriage that was supposed to be purely business. When they finally got up to check on the cow, they found her standing calmly with a healthy new calf nursing beside her. Their vigil had been successful. "Look at that," Tyler said, grinning as he watched the little calf wobble around on unsteady legs. "She's perfect. Just like her mama," Rachel agreed, feeling tears of relief prick her eyes. They had saved both animals, and she couldn't have done it without Tyler's help. Without thinking, she turned and hugged him tightly. Tyler hugged her back, and for a moment, Rachel forgot all about their agreement to keep things professional. She pulled back just enough to look up at him and saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. He was going to kiss her. She could see it in the way his eyes moved to her lips, in the way his hand came up to cup her cheek. And heaven help her, she wanted him to. But then reality crashed back in. This was Tyler, her temporary husband, the man who was planning to leave as soon as his inheritance came through. Getting involved with him would only lead to heartbreak. Rachel stepped back quickly, putting distance between them. "I should go start breakfast," she said, not meeting his eyes. "Rachel," Tyler started, but she was already walking away. The rest of that day was awkward. They were both careful not to get too close, not to let their hands touch when they passed tools back and forth. But the tension was there, crackling between them like electricity before a storm. That evening, Rachel was washing dishes when Tyler came up behind her to put his plate in the sink. For just a moment, his hand brushed against hers in the soapy water. It was barely a touch, but it sent shivers up Rachel's arm. "Sorry," Tyler said, but he didn't sound sorry. His voice was rough, like he was fighting the same battle she was. Rachel turned around to face him, and suddenly they were standing very close together. She could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, could smell the clean scent of soap and hay that always seemed to follow him. "Tyler," she whispered, not sure if she was warning him away or asking him to come closer. "I know," he said quietly. "I know this isn't part of the plan. We agreed to keep things simple." "Yeah, we did." But he wasn't backing away, and neither was she. "Your inheritance," Rachel said weakly. "The divorce. We have it all figured out." "Do we?" Tyler asked, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "Because lately I'm not sure about anything except that I like being here, with you." Rachel's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Tyler, we can't. This is supposed to be temporary." "Says who?" Tyler asked. "Maybe temporary. Doesn't have to mean meaningless." Before Rachel could respond, Tyler's phone rang in the other room. The moment was broken, and they stepped apart like they had been caught doing something wrong. Tyler went to answer the phone, and Rachel heard him talking to someone in a professional tone. When he came back to the kitchen, His expression was different, more guarded. "That was my lawyer," Tyler said. "About the inheritance paperwork. He wants to set up a meeting next week to go over everything." "That's good news," Rachel said, though something about Tyler's expression made her stomach clench. "Yeah," Tyler agreed, but he didn't sound happy about it. "Look, Rachel, about what just happened." "Nothing happened," Rachel said quickly. "We're both tired, and we've been working closely together. It's natural for there to be some confusion. But we know what this is, we know what the deal is." Tyler looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. "Right. The deal." But later that night, as Rachel lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, she couldn't stop thinking about the look in Tyler's eyes when he had almost kissed her, and she couldn't stop wishing she had let him. The next few weeks were torture. They went back to being polite and professional with each other, but the awareness was always there. Rachel found herself watching Tyler when he worked, admiring the way he moved, the gentle way he handled the animals. She caught him looking at her too when he thought she wasn't paying attention. They were like two people dancing around a fire, drawn to the warmth but afraid of getting burned. The breaking point came on a Friday evening in September. Rachel had just gotten home from the diner when she found Tyler on the porch holding a beer and staring out at the sunset. He looked troubled. "Rough day?" she asked, settling into the chair beside him. "You could say that," Tyler replied. "Got another call from the lawyer. Everything's moving faster than expected, could have the inheritance settled within the month." Rachel felt her stomach drop. That's great. That's what we wanted, right?" "Right," Tyler said, but his voice was flat. "What we wanted." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun disappear behind the hills. Finally, Tyler spoke again. "Rachel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay." Tyler turned to look at her directly. "If things were different, if we had met under normal circumstances, do you think we could have had something real?" Rachel's throat felt tight. "Tyler, don't. I'm serious. Forget about the inheritance. Forget about the business arrangement. If I was just a guy who wandered onto your ranch looking for work, and you were just a woman trying to save her family's land, do you think we could have fallen in love?" The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Rachel looked into Tyler's eyes and saw her own feelings reflected back at her. The truth was, she was already halfway in love with him, maybe more than halfway. But loving him and being able to keep him were two different things. "It doesn't matter," Rachel said finally, "because that's not how we met. You're here because you needed a wife, and I'm here because I needed to save the ranch. When that's done, you'll move on to whatever comes next. That's who you are." Tyler flinched like she had slapped him. "Is that really what you think of me? That I'm just going to take the money and run?" "I think you're a good man who's been hurt before," Rachel said carefully. "I think you've been moving from place to place for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to want to stay somewhere." Part 5. Choosing Love. Over Fear October arrived with a chill that seemed to settle into Rachel's bones. She and Tyler had been walking around each other like polite strangers for 2 weeks, ever since their conversation on the porch. The easy companionship they had built over the summer was gone, replaced by careful politeness that hurt worse than arguing would have. Tyler still did his work around the ranch, but he kept to himself. No more shared dinners, no more morning coffee conversations, no more stolen glances across the barnyard. He was pulling away, getting ready to leave, and Rachel was letting him do it because she was too scared to fight for something that might not be real. The call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning, while Rachel was getting ready for work. Tyler's phone rang in the barn and she could hear his voice through the thin walls, though she couldn't make out the words. When she came outside to head to the diner, she found him standing by his truck, talking to someone and looking more serious than she had ever seen him. "Yes, I understand," Tyler was saying. "The divorce papers? Yeah, I asked about those months ago, but..." He paused, listening. No, that's fine. Go ahead and draw them up. We'll probably need them soon anyway." Rachel felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. He was already talking to lawyers about their divorce. While she had been lying awake at night wondering if what they had could be real, he had been making plans to end it. She got in her truck and drove to work, trying not to cry. By the time she got to the diner, she had convinced herself that this was for the best. Tyler was doing exactly what they had agreed he would do. He was going to get his inheritance, she was going to keep her ranch, and they would both move on with their lives. It was what they had planned from the beginning, but knowing something was logical didn't make it hurt any less. When Rachel got home that evening, she found Tyler loading boxes into his truck. Her heart sank. She had known this day was coming, but she wasn't prepared for how final it looked. "Getting an early start?" she asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Tyler looked up from the box he was carrying. The lawyer called. "The inheritance paperwork is moving faster than expected. Should be finalized by the end of the week." "That's great news," Rachel lied. "Yeah." Tyler put the box in the truck bed and turned to face her. "Look, Rachel, I've been thinking. You don't need me here anymore. The ranch is stable, the bank is paid off, and you've got everything under control. There's no reason for me to stick around and make things awkward." Rachel felt something break inside her chest. Right. Of course. You've got places to go, people to see. Something like that. They stood there looking at each other, and Rachel wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him that she didn't want him to go, that the ranch wouldn't be the same without him, that she wouldn't be the same without him. But the words stuck in her throat. "I'll be out of here by Friday," Tyler said. "The divorce papers should be ready by then, too. We can get this whole thing wrapped up clean and simple, just like we planned." "Clean and simple," Rachel repeated. "Right." That night, Rachel called in sick to the diner for the first time in months. She couldn't face serving coffee and pie while her heart was breaking. Instead, she sat on her porch and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong. She was still sitting there when her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, came walking across the field. Mrs. Patterson was in her 70s, a widow who had been running her own small ranch for 20 years. She was also the nosiest person in 3 counties, but she had a good heart. "Heard through the grapevine that your young man is packing up," Mrs. Patterson said without preamble, settling herself in the chair Tyler usually occupied. "He's not my young man," Rachel said automatically. "It's just a business arrangement." Mrs. Patterson snorted. "Honey, I've been married and widowed, and I've seen more relationships than you've had hot dinners. That man looks at you like you hung the moon, and you look at him the same way. If that's business, then I'm the Queen of England." "It's complicated," Rachel said weakly. "Love usually is," Mrs. Patterson replied. "But that doesn't mean you should run from it." "I'm not running from anything. Tyler's the one who's leaving. Is he leaving because he wants to, or because he thinks you want him to?" Rachel was quiet for a moment. "What's the difference?" "All the difference in the world, child. That man has been looking lost since the day he got here. But these past few months, he's looked like he found his home. Now he's looking lost again. Makes me wonder what changed." Mrs. Patterson left after that, but her words stuck with Rachel. Was Tyler leaving because he wanted to, or because he thought it was what she wanted? Had she been so busy protecting herself from getting hurt that she had pushed away the best thing that had ever happened to her? The next morning, Rachel woke up determined to talk to Tyler honestly. She was going to tell him how she felt, even if it meant risking rejection. But when she went to the barn, she found it empty, except for a note on the desk. "Rachel," the note said in Tyler's careful handwriting, "had to go into town to meet with the lawyer, should be back this afternoon. There are some things we need to discuss." Tyler, Rachel spent the day in agony, practicing what she was going to say. She was going to tell Tyler that she loved him. She was going to ask him to stay, not for the ranch or for any practical reason, but because she couldn't imagine her life without him in it. But when Tyler's truck pulled into the driveway that afternoon, Rachel could see from his expression that something was wrong. He looked angry and hurt in a way she had never seen before. "How was the meeting?" she asked as he got out of the truck. "Interesting," Tyler said, his voice cold. "My lawyer had some questions about our marriage. Apparently, he got a call from someone asking about the details of our arrangement." Rachel felt her stomach drop. "What kind of call?" Someone wanted to know if our marriage was legitimate or just a business deal. They seemed to know an awful lot about why we got married and when I'm planning to file for divorce. Rachel's face went pale. She had a horrible feeling she knew where this was going. The lawyer said it was a woman who called, someone local, someone who seemed very interested in making sure everyone knew that our marriage was fake. Tyler looked at Rachel with hurt and disappointment in his eyes. I guess word travels fast in small towns. Tyler, I didn't what? Didn't tell people that you married me for my money. Didn't make it clear that this was all just business because that's what it sounds like to me. That's not what happened, Rachel said desperately. I never talked to anyone about our arrangement. I wouldn't do that. But even as she said it, Rachel remembered her conversation with Mrs. Patterson. Had the older woman misunderstood something Rachel had said? Had she repeated it to someone else? It doesn't matter, Tyler said. But Rachel could see that it did matter. It mattered a lot. I guess it just confirms what I already knew. This was always temporary. You've been counting down the days until you could get rid of me, and now everyone in town knows it. That's not true, Rachel said, tears starting to fall. Tyler, please let me explain. Explain what? That you've been pretending to care about me while planning our divorce? That everything I thought was happening between us was just in my head? No, that's not. Save it, Rachel, I get it. I served my purpose, the ranch is safe, and now you want me gone. Message received. Tyler started walking toward the barn, but Rachel followed him. Tyler, stop, please. You're wrong about this, you're wrong about everything. Tyler turned around, and Rachel could see the pain in his eyes. Am I? Then tell me, Rachel. Tell me what I'm wrong about. This was it. This was her chance to tell him the truth, to fight for what they had. Rachel took a deep breath. You're wrong about me wanting you to leave, she said. You're wrong about this being just business, and you're wrong about me not caring about you. Tyler's expression softened slightly. Rachel, I love you, she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I love the way you gentle horses and fix things without being asked, and remember that I don't like onions. I love that you make me feel safe and that you understand this place the way my dad did. I love you, and I don't want you to go. Tyler stared at her for a long moment. Then why didn't you say something before? Because I was scared, Rachel admitted. Because you've been running from place to place for 3 years, and I was afraid that if I told you how I felt, you'd run from me too. Tyler took a step closer, to her. And I was afraid that if I told you I wanted to stay, you'd think I was just trying to take advantage of you. That you'd think I was just another man trying to get his hands on your land. They looked at each other, both realizing how stupid they had been. So what do we do now? Rachel asked softly. Instead of answering, Tyler reached up and cupped her, face in his hands. We stop being scared, he said, and then he kissed her. It was nothing like the almost kiss they had shared in the barn months ago. This was real and desperate and full of all the feelings they had been holding back. Rachel melted into him, wrapping her arms around his neck and holding on tight. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. I love you too, Tyler said, resting his forehead against hers. I've been in love with you for months, but I didn't think I deserved to ask you to give me a chance.